My name is Carmen Darville, and I'm the Chief of Staff at Yes Prep Public Schools. Yes Prep Public Schools is a public school system. We are part of the charter network, and our mission is that we will empower all Houston students to succeed in college and to pursue lives of opportunity. So we take students most typically from low income communities and ensure they have the same access to an excellent education that is free and rigorous to prepare them for college or career or whatever life path they choose. So in my role as a chief of staff, I actually have quite a non-traditional chief of staff role, and I would describe myself as a utility player. I'm the hub for all things risk management, cross-functional collaboration, and supporting my leader, Mark DeBella, who is the Chief Executive Officer of our organization. I lead a variety of departments for the organization, from analytics to communications, marketing, federal and state compliance and grants, advocacy. So I have a little bit of everything in my functional area, but I feel like my truest work of chief of staff is to ensure that our staff is set up to be successful so that we can best serve our students and families and deliver on our promise to provide an excellent education. Well, what makes my school or our schools unique, so we have over 25 schools, and we started at the middle school level. So as you might imagine, most schools start with the early years, 5 and 6 years old. And we started with the hardest years. If you can remember what it was like to go through puberty, struggle through middle school, and figure out exactly who you wanted to be, that's where our organization started, because we felt like the toughest work of helping students at the middle school level figure out what they wanted and how to get comfortable in their own skin was exactly where we needed to do this work. And so it's really difficult to find rigorous options for education at the middle school level. So we began at 6th grade and grew our grade level. So then added 7th, 8th, all the way into high school. And we were focused solely on getting our kids to and through college. And then we realized a couple of years ago that our kids were coming in, our students were coming into 6th grade, multiple grade levels behind. And what we could do is start earlier to close that gap. So while we still need great options for middle schools, what would it mean to allow their siblings to not get to 6th grade, multiple grade levels behind? And so 2 years ago, we launched elementary schools right in the middle of a pandemic, opening grades as early as pre-K to begin serving all families to ensure that they had great options for education, even if their local school did not provide great options for them. So when I think of my proudest life or business accomplishment, I first reflect on I have not had a traditional path to my career. The path has not been straight. My life path has not been straight. I am the type of person who has always run towards the fire and not away from it. And so when I think about risk management and like my biggest accomplishment, I really think about leading our organization through the pandemic. We decided that safety was our greatest priority. And so miraculously, we didn't lose a single student or staff member over the course of the last 2 years as we worked tirelessly to collaborate with teammates, create systems, processes that didn't exist, advocate for access to vaccines to get our teachers in earlier groups, providing PPE for our educators. And we worked around the clocks for months to secure appointments. I remember getting up in the middle of the night and logging into Walmart and changing my time zone so I could have East Coast access to vaccines on behalf of our staff, requesting testing materials for anyone who desired to receive it so they could test on site at work so that they could feel safe and not exposing their students. And we ended up creating a whole infrastructure for staff and their families to create access. I remember getting emails from staff members saying like, Carmen, based on the systems that you put in place, not only did I get vaccinated, but so did my mom, so did my vulnerable grandmother and my siblings. And I really did it all in the name of student achievement. How can you learn when you don't feel safe? And so it is my greatest accomplishment because I know our students, like education is the path that they want to take as a great equalizer. And so what my job is to clear the path to the greatest rigorous learning continuity despite the circumstances. And so many of our students would not have had access to meals, to reliable internet, or even to just strong teaching and learning if we had not kept our doors open. And it wouldn't have been possible to do so without first supporting, equipping, and protecting our staff. And so, as so many professionals do, especially women and people of color, I doubted myself for far too long in terms of what my capabilities were. Through the pandemic, I also launched a business. And I just knew I had so much more to give to the people around me. And I think what forced me to behave differently was setting my self-doubt aside and following the advice I give to so many others to become the biggest, best version of myself to play big for people around me. And so the choice to do so and to really minimize my own self-doubt to support both my system and my community made the greatest difference. And I think I'm just so proud of the courageousness of our leaders and principals tackling the most difficult problems. And I just wanted to be a facilitator of their success. So while there have been victories throughout my life and career, I've also experienced great challenge and opposition. And one of the things that has come to mind is when I decided to relocate cities. I was leaving a job, I was pregnant, I had our 1-year-old daughter, and my husband was just starting his career in another city. So I moved separately and moved in with a family friend and restarted my career in a completely new area as a director of school operations. I took a pay cut that reduced my pay by 50% of my previous earnings. We had to cut our budget to match my reduced income. And I was determined to rebuild in a new field to expand my view of what education could look like and could be across functional areas. I knew at that time that even though we had less in our bank account, that I needed to live my values, and the money that we did have available needed to go to our children's education. I started that new job 8 months pregnant in a new functional area with a toddler, living apart from my spouse, hopping from house to house until we secured an apartment. And then over the course of the year, I had a baby. I stepped away from work for approximately 6 weeks. And when I returned, I had a fire that I had never felt before. I received 2 promotions at work. We found my husband a job and he relocated, finding another opportunity. And I overcame the challenges by leaning into my network, living with less to prioritize education, and not making excuses for myself and my desire to maneuver through education in a new way. Over the course of a 2-year period, I was promoted 4 times and earned a job offer for my current role as chief of staff. While that period of life presented so many challenges, it really built my empathy and understanding for both our families and students and so many other leaders whose path is not straight and is riddled with challenges along the way, but it is their values alignment and commitment that will get them opportunity after opportunity to rise again. It is exciting and humbling to have an opportunity to even share advice with other HerStory Circle audience members. But when I think about what's front of mind for me, and for several years, I led a team just of women who were incredibly aspirational and gifted and, oh my goodness, so talented. And when I think of the group I've been privileged to lead with, alongside, or be out in front for, I'm just reminded about how our margin for error as women is so incredibly narrow, but repeatedly we find a way to rise and rise again. We're moms, we're wives, we're significant others. We are leaders of team, makers of teams, leaders of leaders, entrepreneurs. And so much of it, we lead change and excellence at scale. It lives with us. If you look at any element of history or any family group, we know women lead villages. made up of each other. We raise children, we build families, and it is one another that actually sustains us as we continue to disrupt and elevate our respective industries. So keep in mind, I know it gets tiring and it feels like the weight of the world can be carried on our shoulders, but together we can do so much despite the little bit of room we're often left. So when I think of women and how they approach their careers, so often I hear from women across industries that they're not sure how to make the greatest impact or what comes next, or even what's a part of their 5-year plan. And when I think of my own journey, I never said to myself, when I grow up, I want to be a chief of staff. But I'm called for impact, as so many other women leaders that I talk to are, regardless of industry, point in career. It's like, put me in, coach, put me where you need me. And especially over the past couple of years, education has taken a hit. Like, we know education was not prepared to take on the weight of a pandemic, as so many other industries were not as well. But when you think about what contribution you can make, you can lock arms with people in education to offer support, offer encouragement, because we know what our kids need to be successful and to have opportunities, as so many of us have been afforded. And then outside of education, just squarely center yourself at a point of impact. Consider the other women around you and what they may not yet see in themselves, and encourage them and be encouraged about what you can accomplish when you lock arms with other people and take a panoramic view for the change and disruption that is needed across industries to set other women up for success. So I have a daughter whose first name is Rowan, Rowan, and she carries my maiden name. When we decided to have children, we committed that regardless, my last name, if I was going to take his name, would bear the name that I carried throughout my life, which is Rowan. And so our daughter has just like such an incredibly important role in my approach to doing this work. And I'll never forget, I was in my room. Anyone who knows me knows I always have my computer around, and being in risk management work, it's important to be available. And I was plugging away on my bedroom floor with my computer in my lap. And Rowan came in there and she said, "Why are you always working? Like, why are you always doing work when you come home?" And I said, "Hey, you know all the opportunities that you have available to you? I just want other kids who look like us and don't look like us, but have a different zip code, to have those same opportunities." And so sometimes I really struggle when those students or families need something from me, and it comes through at all hours. And she just kind of sat with it. She was 7 at the time. She just turned 8. And I could just feel her processing the information that I shared with her. But like, any mothers of girls know, like any mothers of daughters know, it's a little bit of head to head sometimes, and like this fierce love and respect. And I think it was in that moment where Rowan understood for the first time what my job was, why it mattered so much, and like this just deep baseline respect we have for one another as women who do this work. And so Rowan, since that day, has never asked me, "Why do you have out your computer?" And I think for the first time, she truly understands that I took on work that is so much bigger than me or her. And it's really part of the movement of what we believe should be true for all families. So I carry Rowan with me, and she is my first mirror, the person who keeps me the most honest for how I show up every day, how I live through my values. When I come up short, I want to make sure that I deliver for her. And not just when I look myself in the mirror, but when I look at her, she can be proud of who she sees.